Hello, everybody. Barry Johns here. Welcome back to another edition of Studio Talk. I was an early adopter of the Avid Carbon. I had been an Avid fanboy for decades. I think if you've watched my channel, you kind of know my story there. But if you haven't, I'll give you just a very brief overview. Been on Pro Tools HD/HDX, HD Native, and then the Carbon. Those are all the different units that I've used over the last 30 years, pretty close to that. And I've always enjoyed Pro Tools. I've always enjoyed the experience. I still love Pro Tools today, and I absolutely have always loved Avid hardware. That said, I have an issue with Avid as a company and their extortion prices. And today we're going to talk about one that kind of has some similarity to that. And I'm a little bit concerned. So like I said, I was an early adopter of the Avid Carbon, and I'm going to tell you, it's a fantastic interface if you're in the Pro Tools ecosystem. It is absolutely killer. It's one of the best sounding interfaces in its price range that I've used. Now, I've not used all of them, but I'm going to tell you, I've used really good high-end conversion over the many years I've been doing this. And it is certainly on par if it doesn't beat a lot of those. So I'm a huge fan of the Avid Carbon if you're in the Pro Tools ecosystem. It's a great unit. Now, that said, as far as the interface alone is concerned, I would probably put the interface in the price range of its competitors in the $2,700 to $3,000 max. Now, that's just the interface, which means you're paying an additional anywhere from $1,000 to $1,300, depending on how you look at that, to add DSP. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on DSP and whether you need that today or whether it's better to invest that in a Mac Studio or something like that, where you really shouldn't have that need if you're in the analog world. Obviously, in the VI world, things change. Okay, so now let's move on. So I think you get the history that I'm a huge fan of the Carbon, and I'm a huge fan of Avid products in general, just not the company. I abandoned them, and since I've gotten away, ding, ding, ding is constantly going off saying there is nothing special about Pro Tools, and there's nothing necessarily inherently special about Avid hardware today, okay? They still make great hardware, not taking anything away from that. Their engineers and their R&D people do a fantastic job. Huge positive feelings from me on that. But I can no longer work with Avid. So now, what you're going to get, I'm always objective. Even if I don't like a particular company or don't like an issue, I always will remain objective. Now, when the Carbon came out, it was a closed ecosystem. It had AVB, which was kind of a joke, okay, because it was locked AVB. In other words, you couldn't add other AVB units to it, which if they'd done that, that would have been freaking fantastic and would have opened up a whole new world. But they intentionally chose not to do that. Now I'm quickly realizing, because they knew exactly what they were doing when they built the Carbon, there's a reason, and it's actually pretty pathetic, that they only have one set of ADAT I/O on the Carbon, okay? Limiting you to no more than 16 I/O at any given time, okay? And so, via ADAT, all other interfaces in that price range have a minimum of 2 sets of ADAT, aka like my RME Fireface Plus, that I bought to replace my Carbon, and I don't miss it for 1 second, okay? So when they did that, that's the intentional stuff. These are the ridiculous games that Avid today is still playing. There was a time that was necessary. Keep that closed ecosystem. Force people to have to, if they want to be users of your products and of your DAW, they have no choice but to buy into that ecosystem. But today, that is utterly ridiculous that they would do that today. They did make a good step forward, in my opinion, with the Carbon compared to HDX and really opened up that whole world. But the timing, and they did it, we're at that transition stage where I today haven't used DSP for a long time and don't need it in my workflow. Now, I'm primary analog. Now, again, if you're virtual instruments, sometimes that can come into play because you can keep a high buffer and track low, but you can do that with just about any interface today because they all have a third-party GUI. But it is seamless, in fairness, in Pro Tools, and you don't even notice it, and you don't have to think about anything. That's what's magical about that ecosystem, to be fair. Now, I predicted, if you can go back and watch some of those videos, I predicted that they would add expansion microphone preamps via AVB and keep that all in the Avid ecosystem. Now, for the record, in case you're curious, you can add like an Audient ASP 880 or something like that to a carbon via ADAT, and it'll work great. You'll be able to use DSP on any I/O coming or any input coming from the audio unit as an example. So that works. Had they done 2 sets of that, then you would have the equivalent of what they have today. So what's the issue, Barry? They came out with your ability to add an additional 16 channels, but you got to buy 2 separate units to get to that 24 channels, right? It's kind of misleading on the surface, but it's revealed quite quickly, so I'll give them a pass on that one. But, so you can add an additional 8 per, okay? Here's the kicker. Well, let me don't get to the kicker just yet. Let me talk about the microphone preamps in the Carbon, okay? Because they're the exact same microphone preamps in their 8-channel expansion units, again, of which you'd have to buy 2 to get up to 24 channel. And to really do any reasonable work, you really need 24 channels if you're tracking live bands, okay? That's a great sweet spot if you're tracking live bands. You can get away with 16, but it's better to have 24. It gives you a lot more flexibility, headphone cues, and things like that. Okay, so outside of that, the microphone preamps built into the Carbon are very, very, very good when looking at it from comparing to built-in microphone preamps against other interfaces. Let's face it, the majority of interfaces out there, they don't necessarily have the greatest microphone preamps. For those of us investing in that high level of that amount of investment into that ecosystem, we're almost always likely using external, better quality microphone preamps in our workflow. Certainly I have for, gosh, decades at this point, okay? And so compared to other interfaces, I would say their microphone preamps are probably the top of the line compared to interfaces. I think, well, without a doubt, the Focusrite Red series, their high-end conversion and stuff, like the 8 pre, the 4 pre, I think one of those is discontinued now, but they also incorporate that into the line, the 16 line and the 8 line, a couple of mic preamps into that. Those are certainly, without question, on par with what the Carbon can do for microphone preamps. So as far as an interface is concerned, they're really good. Now, here's the issue, and here's something all of you have got to think about. I'm going to say, if you buy that 8-channel expansion, in my opinion, you're out of your mind, okay? You're just out of your mind. I would rather get out of that ecosystem and get into something else where I can do that so much easier for a fraction, and I literally mean a fraction of the cost, to add 8-channel interface quality microphone preamps. Now, granted, they're really good microphones for an interface, okay? $3,000 for 8 channels. $3,000 for 8 channels. You can buy some killer 8-channel mic preamps for a lot less than that. I would argue half of that are on par with what they're giving you, okay? And so that's where I get really confused. At what point let's say you want to have 24 channels of I/O. This is how much of a joke this is if you really think about it. If you want to have 24 channels of I/O, you got to spend $4,000 for a Carbon, $3,000 for one mic pre, $3,000 for another. What's that? $10,000? Okay, $10,000 for 24 channel of I/O and interface quality microphone preamps on there. Now you could argue you also get the line input, so you could also connect external preamps. Yeah, but for that freaking price, I mean, come on. I just bought a Ferrofish Pulse 16 that's absolutely killer, that gives me 16 channels of additional I/O mine's via Maddie, but it also do Dante. Okay, but you can also do ADAT, okay? You can add all that flexibility, and plus it gives me an additional, because I use it via Maddie, I still have an additional 16 channels of ADAT available on the Pulse and 16 channels of ADAT available on the RME Fireface Plus. So I have all kinds of expansion possibilities for the future. I doubt I'm necessarily going to go down that road, but it's awesome to have it, okay? And so if this unit had come in at like $15.99 or something like that, I would be on this channel saying, okay, this is a good deal. Go buy it. If you're in the Pro Tools ecosystem, if you already have a Carbon, then I would give it a thumbs up recommendation, because that is about what it's worth. It's not worth any more than that in this guy's opinion. Now, I'm basing that, okay, I haven't used this unit, but I don't need to. I've already used the Carbon. I already know it inside out, and it's just a continuation. They're not promoting that the mic preamps are better in this versus a Carbon, that it's the next evolution. No. It reminds me when DigiDesign first came out with their 8-channel pre, And then when Avid bought DigiDesign, they went out and all they did was keep that same microphone preamp and just put a different colored faceplate on it and continue to sell it for $4,000. What a joke. They were selling new for $4,000. You could pick them up used for less than $1,000, okay? I've got one sitting in my garage that I wouldn't use to save my life today. And even back then, it wasn't that good. Certainly did not justify the cost, which is why nobody went to it. And even in that unit, ADAT was widely used back then, but they didn't even put that in there. It was just analog 16 channels. That was it, and mediocre at best. It seems like they're continuing with that same mindset, albeit the microphone preamps in the Carbon are leaps and bounds better than what they are in that 8-channel mic pre, okay, the 8-channel pre it's called. But still, I mean, this outrageous prices, all they're doing is taking, and I'm one of these guys, right? Remember, I've been a fanboy. It's only recently in the last year I've broken away from that ecosystem, and now I see the freaking light of day. There's nothing special about Pro Tools today, and there's absolutely nothing special about Avid hardware today. That has been reaffirmed to this guy over and over and over. Yes, if you're like a deep, deep, deep editor, then you're going to benefit from the advanced editing options in Pro Tools. But that's pretty much where it stops, okay? I'm talking about things that are compelling features. We can all pick and choose these little things that only a select few people actually use, okay? You may use it every day, but don't be naive and think everyone else does. That's a mistake so many people make. So I absolutely cannot recommend expanding the Carbon with this. I think you'd be out of your mind to do it. Your money would be much better served investing in external microphone preamps and at the very least adding them via something like a Ferrofish Pulse or something like that that will enable you to expand better off, but you're only going to get 8 channels that way. There's different ways of doing it, but that's reasonably priced. There's a lot of things you can do. Maybe not that's the best solution, but regardless, I think you're better served investing your money otherwise. If you're thinking about buying, if you're just staying Carbon, you're fine with the 8 channels of I/O that are in it, then stay there. I'm not suggesting you need to go away with it. I think you already, just like I did, see the benefits of that unit, and it is a fan-freaking-tastic unit. Huge A+ for it. Little overpriced, but I get it. It's fine. It's fine. I paid it, okay, and I was one of the first people to get one, okay, when it first came out. So, but they don't hold the resale value. Let me tell you that right now. You spend $3,800 on a Carbon, you can't sell it the next day for more than $3,000. Just check Reverb sold prices, and you'll find out very quickly. It does not hold its value. So back on this, if you're thinking about adding an 8-channel mic interface, 8-channel mic preamps, and you're looking at this, okay, I'm going to tell you now is the time to seriously consider getting out of the Carbon altogether. Now is the time to consider that, in this guy's opinion. If you're just going to stay Carbon, then stay there. You're good. You're set. Okay, you're fine. And a ton of people can get by with just 8IL, right? If you're creative with it and you're not tracking live bands and stuff. But if you need to do that, okay, and expand your I/O, now's the time I would recommend you reconsider whether you want to stay in that ecosystem or not, because you're going to keep investing money after money after money that will not, understand this, will not hold its own. And one thing I find interesting about this 8-channel mic preamp, I haven't looked at this yet, but it'd be interesting to see if that has AVB opened up. In other words, let's say, for example, that I have a Motu AVB box as an example, right? That, you know, they're heavily into AVB. So a Motu box as an example, and I want to connect that new Avid pre to that. If they allow that, that's a little more. It opens up things. Still nowhere near justified, but let's set that aside for a second. It still at least shows that they're willing to expand beyond their ecosystem. But if this is just locked in, completely locked in to the Carbon, I'm telling you, I think you'd be out of your mind. You're going to get a ton of YouTube fanboys who are just mouthpieces of Avid, who will tell you whatever you want to hear and sell you on this stuff. Unfortunately, that's the way way too many YouTubers are out there. This guy is not, okay? So that's my 2 cents on this. You can agree with me or you can disagree with me. This is just one guy's opinion, sharing it with all of you, okay? So if you like the things I talk about on this channel, do me a favor, hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell. Help me grow the channel. I'd really appreciate it. And leave some comments down below. Tell me how you feel. Now, don't be a jerk down there. Don't be one of those guys who can't have an adult conversation and just offer intelligent, opposing opinions without taking a dig. Those of you who choose to take that dig, I can't imagine what your life's going to turn out to be. So negative, negative, negative. Let's have adult conversations and let's respectfully agree to disagree if that's the case. I'm all ears when it comes to that, but I'm not going to put up with a bunch of jerks out there, blah, 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 keyboard warriors in their underwear in their bedroom using a $200 interface thinking that they have this opinion on this. There's so much of that out there, and there's nothing wrong with a $200 interface. Back in the day, I started with something equivalent to that today, although back then it was more, but still, entry level. So if you're on that, hey, no digs, baby. Make your music and love it all the way. All right. So until next time, I hope all of you have a great day. Bye-bye.